5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates,
5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5.
You got me. You got me good there.
Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah.
Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace to
Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News.
the People's Channel?
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co. Well, first they came for the disabled adults, and now it seems it might be the kids. There's worries that the legal requirement to provide special needs support in schools may be under question as the Labour Party desperately now try to get to grips with benefit spending. What would you think to that? I can tell you a huge momentum. Instead of looking at that they implement a wealth tax instead. Would you support that? And also, coming under focus now, mobility cars. Should you be able to get brand new BMWs, example, on welfare when, let's face it, they're out of reach now of most working people? There's lots to discuss on that. And the First Council is to implement a 4-day working week after a successful trial, they say. So is this the new future of work, or is it an example of governmental slacking? And it is the 20th anniversary of the 7/7 terror attacks. So many politicians reflecting on lives lost. But lives were not lost. They were not carelessly misplaced. Innocent people were murdered by extreme Islamist fanatics. And I'm wondering, have we actually learnt lessons when we still can't seem to call this stuff what it actually was? Well, we've got all of that and lots more before 7 o'clock, and alongside me, my panel, Zia Youssef, the head of Reform UK's Doge unit, and Barry Gardner, the Labour MP for Brent West. But before we get stuck in, let's cross live and give you your 6 o'clock news headlines.
Michelle, thank you, and a very good evening to you. The top story tonight at 6. Well, the names of the 52 victims of the 7/7 London bombings have been read out at a memorial service marking 20 years since those devastating attacks. Families, survivors and first responders gathered at St Paul's Cathedral, where white petals fell as the names were read by loved ones. 4 candles were also carried through the cathedral for each site of the 2005 bombings, which killed 52 and injured over 700. King Charles and Sir Keir Starmer called for unity today as events across London pay tribute to the lives lost. Well, our royal correspondent Cameron Walker is in central London for us today, where a ceremony has been taking place.
We did see there was some remarkable acts of kindness, of bravery. It's a reminder that actually London stood together, and we've got to remind ourselves that what these terrorists seek to do is to drive a wedge between different communities. They seek to sow division and hatred, and London stood united, not just against the terrorists, but united supporting each other.
That there, of course, Sir Sadiq Khan, London Mayor. We will try and get the very latest for you from Cameron at Hyde Park, where he has been for us today. In the United States, the death toll in Texas has now risen to at least 89 after flash floods ripped through the Kerr County. In the early hours of Friday, at least 27 young girls and staff from a Christian summer camp are among the dead, with dozens still missing, and search efforts now into a 4th day. President Trump has signed a major disaster declaration as questions mount over whether warnings were timely or effective. And with more storms on the way, flood alerts are still in place until at least tonight. Here, meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer is facing a fresh backbench revolt over controversial plans to overhaul special needs education. There are reports that ministers are poised to scrap the system which ensures pupils with special needs get personalised support at school. It currently costs the taxpayer £12 billion a year. Senior party figures warn the reforms risk welfare Mark II as the government faces mounting pressure to balance the books. And specialist nursery teachers in disadvantaged areas will be offered £4,500 cash incentives to boost early years education. The new scheme, part of the government's Best Start in Life strategy, will also oversee Ofsted inspections, with all new providers being checked within 18 months of opening. The Education Secretary says the plan aims to ensure every child gets the foundation they need to succeed, regardless of their background. Well, earlier today, Minister for Early Years Stephen Morgan told GB News he wants to make sure the system is fit for the future.
I talk to parents all the time, obviously in my own constituency, on visits that I do and those that write to me, and they would agree that the system just isn't working at the moment. And our priority is to get it right at the right place for every child. We've put more money in to send. We put £1 billion in high needs funding in last year. We've put more money in for capital, so more places in mainstream settings as well. Our Best Start centres, there will be dedicated professionals in those centres to support children with SEND. So the money's going in, the investment's going in, and we want to deliver the reform to make sure the system is fit for the future.
And Donald Trump is threatening new tariffs for nations aligning with the BRICS alliance, which he says he sees as anti-American. The US president says any country backing BRICS policies, made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, will face an additional 10% tariff with no exceptions. His warning on social media came after BRICS leaders issued their own joint statement claiming that rising tariffs were threatening global trade. Comes as the president's administration is also racing to finalise a string of new trade deals before the 9th of July deadline. That's the news on GB News. I'll be back with you for the news at 7. Now, though, it's over to Michelle.
Thank you very much for that, Sam, and hello, good evening to each and every one of you. I am Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co, keeping you company till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, my panel, I've got Zia Youssef, the head of Reform UK's Doge unit, and Barry Gardner, the Labour MP for Brent West. Good evening back to you. I like my Mondays with you two, and you seem to be quite popular, both of you as well, with the viewers, so welcome back tonight. Each and every single one of you, you're also very welcome, whether you're watching, listening. You can join the conversation in all the usual ways. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay. Or, of course, you can tweet. You can X me. There is a lot we need to discuss tonight, ladies and gents. I want to reflect on the anniversary of 7/7. I want to ask you about councils working 4-day weeks. Is that the future, or is it a little bit of burn idleness? And I also want to focus on welfare and wealth tax. Where to even begin? Well, of course, we covered at length, didn't we, the absolute debacle. It was, no offence, Keir Starmer, if you're watching, pretty pathetic, actually. All of the goings-on with welfare, looking at whether or not things like PIP were going to be targeted, how they were going to be targeted. We've all followed all of that. Essentially, so much of it ended up just getting dropped. Well, apparently now there's concerns that children with special educational needs could be coming into the line of fire, with the Labour Party desperately trying to balance the books. This, Barry Gardner, you know, Labour Party were asked at the weekend about these EHCPs. Basically, when a child's got additional needs, they have a legal requirement to get support, specialist support, within their educational settings. Are these things going to be scrapped?
No, look, let's understand what the experience of parents is. I've got so many parents who are trying to get the correct support for their children, and the current system is failing desperately. We want to back families. We want to make sure that kids have that early support, which means that later on, which is usually when these things manifest themselves and parents are coming saying, look, you failed my child. That's why we've already put £1 billion more into SEND provision, that special educational needs provision, and why we've actually put 740 million, so effectively £750 million to local authorities, and that's money which is creating new specialist places. So this is not about saving money. Otherwise, we wouldn't be putting £1.75 billion in there. It's about supporting families at the right time, which is right at the start, preschool, nursery, making sure that actually the problems that do happen and develop now aren't going to happen in the future. That's where eventually there may well be a saving, because we won't need that provision. And that's what every parent wants. They want to know that their child is not going to end up needing that provision.
Well, apparently, just in England alone, ladies and gents, there's 640,000 children with these certificates. Many of you as well, you'll be having children. You'll be trying to get one of these certifications and you'll be struggling. And that number, of course, is just in England. So the true reflection, of course, will be much greater. Zia Youssef, your thoughts?
Well, the numbers that Barry was just talking about there, $1 billion, $750 million, they pale in comparison to the infinite money tree that the government appears to have for foreign citizens. And this is the problem. It's really difficult to have a serious conversation about, should there be reform around the way SEND children receive the support they need, when that $1 billion and $750 million we talked about, Barry, what about the £5.5 to £7 billion a year being spent on asylum hotels alone for foreign citizens? We're talking about withdrawing benefits for British people, for British SEND children, specifically here. And in the name of saving money, when there is infinite money, I keep going back to the same point over and over, but it's inescapable. It is inescapable. We have not just the £5.5 to £7 billion on asylum hotels, we have the £15 billion a year on foreign aid, the £12 billion on net zero. British people throughout history have had no issue with, making sacrifices for the greater good. And they would be more than happy to consider arguments about the manner and the cost of delivering welfare for British people, if it were not for the fact that there is a disgraceful double standard that goes on, where the border is being left totally open. We have, again, seemingly infinite money for foreign citizens whose first act upon coming to this country is to break our laws, and then they go into free accommodation, they get free healthcare. They get free trips to the circus and to the safari parks and to skate parks. And I mean, you laugh, Barry, but these are facts.
Okay,
and people watching this program, people watching this program, jaws will be on the floor when they hear about the fact that the British government under Labour now want to withdraw benefits from British people, yet they have infinite money for foreign citizens.
Let's establish the facts, OK? This is not about withdrawing money. As I said, the £1.75 billion is not the total sum that is being spent on SEND. It's actually the additional money that this government has already put in. So you're not comparing like with like there. But look, I'm pleased if what I'm hearing, because you haven't criticised this extra provision, you haven't criticised the fact that we are trying to start this early, doing it before kids even get to school with these new Best Start hubs. And, one of the great things that the previous Labour government did was Sure Start. And it got children ready, it prepared them for life, and it also helped parents to do that. And that's what these Best Start hubs are going to do. And now we're in a different generation. We've got AI. We're able to connect parents up through those hubs digitally as well to make sure that all that support is in place. And I would simply say to you, look, don't you think that's the right thing to do, Zia? That here we can support families, support them to make sure that their children don't develop those educational needs, that they're ready for school, ready to start on day one when they go into that primary classroom.
No, I wouldn't, because the auspice upon which all of this is being done, Barry, number one, is being done through the auspice of looking to find savings.
No, it's not.
Because there are enormous amounts of money. Well, they absolutely are, because it's Barry. You've got to be honest here. This is all part of a big attempt from this Labour government, led by Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, to reduce the amount of money, or specifically, actually, reduce the growth rate in welfare spending in this country, which both have basically said is out of control. Now, clearly, Keir Starmer is losing that argument. as we've seen, which is why we saw somewhat tragically the Chancellor of Exchequer of the United Kingdom in tears on the front bench. Clearly there's turmoil inside the party, but this is my point. So long as British people are being betrayed writ large by this Labour government, there can't be any serious discussion about welfare reform, because everyone in this country is going to turn around and go, well, how come you want to take support away from my child who has a special educational need, when there seems to be infinite money for people, largely young men, coming across the English Channel illegally, Barry?
As I said, it's not taking away support, it's providing £1.75 billion extra for these children. Not only that, it's putting those hubs in place for families. And above all, if it were simply, I mean, you've actually said that the welfare spending is too high. So, you know, you're arguing against your own position. And what was it Nigel Farage said about diagnosing children with additional needs? He said it's creating a class of victims, and a party spokesman blamed naughty children and bad parenting. That you know, parents watching this, understanding that your party has said that their child's special educational needs are a result of bad parenting and naughty children, they'll think, you just don't know what ordinary people's lives are like. They are struggling with these needs for their children. They're struggling to get the support. What this government is doing is providing it.
OK, so just to be clear, Barry, you're claiming that as a result of these policies, more money will be spent on welfare for SEND children, not less. Is that what you're saying?
No.
OK, well, that's what you just said. So you are reducing spending.
It's not what I just said, and let me cash it out for you if you were confused about it in any way, Zia.
I am often confused, Barry, so please do.
What I've said is that if you spend money on prevention, if you get children early, if you make sure that that support is in place right from the beginning, then the problems that at the moment are manifesting themselves as a result of a failure.
Barry, I'm still not hearing an answer to my question.
This is the answer to your question.
Is spending up or down?
This is the answer to your question. Then ultimately, at the end of the day, you're not going to get those same problems that you need to spend billions on at the end of the day. But it's getting it right, it's supporting families, it's supporting children. And this is not about some Johnny-come-lately scheme. If you look at our manifesto, if you look at what Bridget Phillipson set out there about supporting families, about best practice hubs, about the sort of Sure Start Mark II, that's been there right from the beginning. So it's absolutely a commitment that we made to the electorate. It's a commitment that we were elected upon, and now we're delivering.
Do you think people were voted you in to cut welfare spending? Do you really think that's what people voted Labour for? And I want to answer this is my fundamental question, Barry, because you haven't answered it.
Do you think that they're voting for reform to cut welfare spending? Because that's what you've claimed.
Barry, what I'm saying is this: the whole auspice upon which this has been generated and is now being discussed and put forward is on the basis that welfare spending for British people needs to be cut. And it's still unclear. Are you saying that the net cost to the Exchequer will be up or down? Will it be up or down as a result of this?
You're absolutely wrong. That
One
is
word,
not
up
the
or
premise.
down, Barry?
That is not the premise, OK? That's not the
but
reason.
You're not answering the question.
I am answering the question. You just don't like the answers here. The answer is that ultimately it will cost, the whole system will cost less because we're putting more money in the beginning in prevention.
So you're reducing spending.
And ultimately it will therefore cost less.
So you're reducing spending while spending on foreign citizens continues to spiral out of control, Barry. And that's the fundamental problem.
Okay. And that's what you don't like, Zia.
Barry, thank you for answering the question. So you're saying spending will come down for British SEND children, and while that's happening, we have an endless, on a daily basis, hundreds of people, foreign, unvetted people, coming across the channel illegally. We have billions to spend on foreign aid, or tens of billions of pounds to spend on the crazy, mad net zero and climate capture projects, but apparently there's no money left for British people.
Look, are you a parent of a child that's got special educational needs? Because if you are, I would really love to hear from you tonight to understand how you're feeling, because when you've got a child with additional needs, it is not a walk in the park. and you will know that you fight each and every single step of the way. It is very, very traumatic, and if you've managed to get a little bit of support and you've managed to breathe a bit of a sigh of relief, having these conversations and hearing these conversations will put the fear of dread into you, because you'll be worried perhaps about what is potentially going to come your way. How do you feel tonight? Do you have faith that actually nothing will be cut and this is just perhaps a different ordering of systems, or not? I want to hear from you. Get in touch, join the conversation in all the usual ways. Some suggestions, though, that actually, rather than cutting and tinkering, what we could do is create a new wealth tax. Would that be the answer? Get in touch, tell me your thoughts. I'll see you in 2.
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Dewbs & Co. with me, Michelle Dewberry, Barry Gardner and Zia Youssef. Look, before the break, we're talking about welfare spending. Lots of conversation, lots of debate. We can continue that all night long. But one suggestion that seems to be gathering pace, actually, is whether or not, instead of tinkering with cutting, we should be introducing a new tax, the wealth tax you might be familiar with by now. This would basically be tackling people with wealth of over £10 million. Zia Youssef, your thoughts on this? Would you support a wealth tax? Do you think that's what this country needs?
No, it's the opposite of what this country needs. Look, Reform believes that Britain can once again be a prosperous and powerful country, Michelle. And one of the things we've got to be honest about, one of the ingredients for that to be true, and you can look throughout history, including recent history, you need wealthy people to be desperate to be here and to be investing in British companies, buying assets and paying tax. And the reality is we need wealthy people to apply their broad shoulders to the tax burden, because that document you're holding in your hand that shows the enormous...
Let's get it on the screen, because the viewers can't see my grubby little mitts. Go on. This is what Zia's referring to, the millionaire migration in 2025 graph. Carry on, Zia.
Well, it's not a migration, it's an exodus, right? So that bar for viewers watching at home, right at the bottom in the deep red, is the United Kingdom. This country is losing a staggering number of people who pay enormous amounts of tax. And a wealth tax. Look, you can go through European countries, France, Germany, Italy, Austria, Sweden, all countries that have toyed with wealth taxes because they sound politically seductive to people who have no idea how the world actually works. And all of them have scrapped them because they do not raise the money people think they will, because the people they try to target have, of course, the best estate planners, the best tax planners, Michelle. But I want to be really clear about things. Look at someone like Sir James Dyson, obviously famous for his VAX, and I recommend any entrepreneur watching this programme go read both of his books. He's an inspirational guy. He is in absolute exasperation, not just with this Labour government, with the Tory government as well. People like him, he's probably the closest thing, I would say, to a British Elon Musk. And, we need to be celebrating success, not punishing it. And we need, of course, for inequality to come down. We need everybody in this country who grafts to be able to succeed. But this idea of a wealth tax, it sounds politically seductive. All it results in is less money to the exchequer. And then what happens? As the people with the broader shoulders leave, I'll tell you what happens. The people below them end up having to shoulder the tax burden. And people watching this programme who are waking up early in the morning and working and wondering what is the point, because the tax burden on this country is at the highest level since World War II, will attest to that.
Just to put some meat on the bones, if you would like. So what the suggestion would be, if you've got assets over 10 million, you'd have a 2% wealth tax. That'd give you about 10 billion a year to the Treasury. Barry Gardner, your thoughts?
Well, look, I thought it was really interesting what Zia said, because he explained why it is that wealthy people don't pay their fair share of tax in this country. I'll quote him, I wrote it down. He said, there's no point in targeting them because they have the best estate planners and the best tax planners. In other words, it's your Goldman Sachs executives, it's your billionaires and your millionaires that are able to get round all these taxes. And we need to make sure they're paying their fair share.
Is that
they're paying nothing if it's not here, Barry. This is the problem, So in your fantasy socialist world, that works. In the real world, it just doesn't. And we're a very practical party. I want to go back to the point. We don't believe in managed decline in this country. We think Britain can be prosperous and powerful again. And you look through Britain's history. You look through Britain's history when it was prosperous and powerful, the most prosperous and powerful country in the world for a significant portion of its history. What was true at that time was that you had people with enormous resources in this country absolutely doing incredible things, employing lots of people. But one of the other things a wealth tax does, and this is one reason why Austria, Germany, Italy, France all scrapped their wealth taxes, having implemented them, is because it actually disincentivizes ownership of productive assets. It disincentivizes people investing in British companies. Something, by the way, Rachel Reeves is racking her brains to try to work out how things can improve. Are you OK there, Barry?
Yes, right. Well, Barry is coughing away. So what I'm going to do, actually, I will throw it back over to you at home. I know that some of you will be getting in touch and saying, Michelle, so what if these people leave? If you are one of those viewers saying, so what, get in touch and tell me, where will this wealth come from? If you're happy to, for example, lose 15,000 millionaires and instead gain 22,000 so-called asylum seekers, how do we balance those books? Get in touch and tell me your maths. I'm intrigued to hear it after the break. Lots to discuss. 4-day working weeks with councils. Mobility. Is it fair that someone should be able to get a, for example, brand new BMW if they're on welfare, but some of you workers absolutely would never be able to achieve that? I'll see you in 2.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The heat wave across Europe is increasingly becoming confined to eastern areas of the country. Temperatures here could locally still be 5-10 degrees above normal for the year. On the edge of that heat, though, there are some heavy thunderstorms breaking out for the Balkans and over the Alps. Generally further towards the west, though, temperatures now easing back towards average, but northerly winds bringing a touch of cloud to parts of Iberia, as well as Madeira and Tenerife. Generally, though, for many areas over the next few days, there will be a lot of sunshine around.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. We will see some heavy showers clearing overnight, but clear spells and largely dry weather return by dawn, increasingly sunny and increasingly warm during the next few days. Now, we've got low pressure clearing to the east. That low pressure brought us some unsettled weather over the weekend, cool conditions as well. It continues to bring heavy showers overnight to eastern parts of the country, some thunderstorms and some persistent rain. But further west, largely clear and certainly more widely clear by dawn. Under those clear skies, a fresh start to the day on Tuesday, temperatures ranging between 8 and 13 Celsius. But plenty of sunshine around first thing, certainly across central parts of the UK. Start off with barely a cloud in the sky through the Midlands and central southern England. Either side of that, there will be some patchy cloud into West Wales, southwest England, and some showers running down the North Sea coast into East Anglia. Thicker cloud awaits across parts of western Northern Ireland, and that cloud also starting to drift into the Western Isles. Some patchy cloud into the north of Scotland, otherwise Scotland's largely cloud-free. Plenty of sunshine, and that sunshine causing temperatures to rise quickly through the morning. But there will be further showers into eastern England. They tend to fade away by early afternoon. Still some cloud here and thicker cloud across Northern Ireland and western Scotland. A few spots of rain associated with this. High teens in the northwest, where we've got the sunshine elsewhere, low 20s to mid-20s fairly widely. And then we start Wednesday with plenty of sunshine once again towards the southeast, thicker cloud towards the northwest, some outbreaks of rain, mostly light and patchy for western and northern Scotland as well as Northern Ireland. And that tends to fizzle away later in the day as higher pressure builds, and that higher pressure is going to lead to widespread sunny skies on Thursday and into Friday, and that means widespread hot air returning.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Drivers should exercise caution on the A9 Dornoch Bridge due to high winds. The A483 between Dolford and Lanano has an accident with local diversions. In Leicestershire, the M1 northbound between junctions 21 and 22 has a collision, closing one lane. Buckinghamshire's M40 northbound delays 30 minutes due to a vehicle crossing the central reservation between junctions 4 and 5. A broken down vehicle on the M4 eastbound slip road at junction 19 in South Gloucestershire. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast and cross-country services face disruption at Birmingham New Street. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co keeping you company till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got Zia Youssef and Barry Gardner. We've just been talking at the start of the programme about whether or not SEND, so essentially special educational support within schools, should that come under scrutiny? Lots of you getting in touch on this one. Julie says, please, Michelle, you're talking about hubs. Please, can I tell you, you cannot make an autistic child better by having a hub at the start of their life. They need all of the support they can possibly get through their school life and beyond. Lots of you getting in touch. You need these educational health plans. It would be so very wrong to get rid of them, says another one of my viewers. Ella, she says, I used to work in the previous Show Start projects. It was a complete farce, she says. It wasn't well run at all. Bill, he's got in touch and said his grandson has high functioning autism and really struggles within the mainstream system. He's saying you need more specialist school provisions. What would you say to that? The wealth tax, I'm intrigued to hear from you. If you're somebody who's getting in touch and saying, good, let the millionaires go. You can't just say that to me. You've got to tell me, how will you replace that tax revenue? What is your idea for that? If you can get in touch with your solution, I'll be delighted to read that one out. But look, we've been talking about welfare and the such like. I want to talk to you about mobility. This one, I think actually, Zia, this was something that you brought up when you was on the programme last week, I think it was. So many people and places and outlets are now focusing on mobility. And there's a big question mark over whether or not one should be able to access high-end vehicles like BMWs and such like on mobility schemes, when, let's face it, so many of the working population would never be able to get a BMW. And yes, before you get in touch with me, I also do recognise that many people getting mobility also work. But should you be getting these high-end cars in this way?
No, the words BMW and benefits should not exist within the same sentence in a functioning welfare system. And it breeds a sense, and we hear this all the time, knocking on doors, emails, talking to people in this country, Michelle. People who set their alarm clocks in the evening before they go to bed and rise early, and they graft and they ask, what is the point? Because my next door neighbour or this person I know, they have a BMW or an Audi, and they seem to have a much better lifestyle than they do as a result of not working. And that is not to say, of course there are people who need benefits, of course there are people who need welfare, and of course there are people who need assistance, vehicular assistance, at the taxpayer expense. That makes sense. But the idea that they should be driving BMWs, again, I put it to people watching this programme, go and Google right now, BMW, well, not right now because you're watching Michelle's show.
Not
but
right now.
Not right now.
You've got a gripping TV debate to watch.
As soon as Michelle's no longer on your screen at this moment on GB News, Google BMW Motability. And what you will find is endless advertisements telling you about how you can multiply.
I'm going to do it now. I'm going to multitask.
3 named drivers. And, you know, people say, well, I had to put a deposit down or whatever. And it's like, well, again, if you are receiving taxpayer assistance, then I don't think that money should be redeemable against a BMW. I think that's a perfectly reasonable position. And by the way, if you look at how ridiculous the system has now become, there's a campaign group called Crush Crime who highlighted a very interesting point that encapsulates the problem with this programme. Number one, over 6,000 people now, Michelle, are receiving these PIP plans, and you can expend your mobility portion of your PIP allowance on these cars. Over 6,000 of them are on PIP because of alcohol misuse. And they can spend that money on a car. So statistically, and this is a fact, extraordinarily, and sums up Britain, frankly, in this day and age, you are more likely as a drunk driver to receive a free car than a lifetime driving ban. That is at the nexus of the appalling state of our judiciary and the appalling state of our welfare system. How can it be true that if you get a conviction for drunk driving, Michelle, that you are more likely to receive a free car than to receive a lifetime driving ban? How do you think that makes hard-working British people feel? How do you think that makes people who are victims of drunk driving feel? What do you think that does to the incentive structure inside this country? That is why so many tens of millions of people in this country are asking themselves, why do I bother?
Why do I bother? Do you ask yourselves that at home, ladies and gents? Barry Gardner, your thoughts?
Look, there can be no justification for people who don't need, for mobility purposes, to get a vehicle from mobility. It's absolutely right. And that's why...
Should they have a BMW?
Look, quite honestly, if they're using money which we've given them to make up for their own increased costs of being disabled, and they choose that that's the best way for them to spend their money, you're in favour of freedom of choice.
But it's not their money, Barry, it's taxpayers' money.
Yeah, but no, we give that to them to make up for the increased costs that they have of living. So it then becomes their money. Now, I agree with you that it shouldn't be the case that people who don't need it are getting that, and I think people should spend their money wisely. People don't always do that, as you know.
But they are. So number one, it's not their money, it's taxpayers' money. And secondly, it's not even... So this is one of the big problems with the programme, Michelle. It is not means tested. So I know for a fact, because I've actually encountered these examples in real life, households with multiple six-figure incomes, with BMWs in their driveway, funded in part by the taxpayer. There's nothing remotely fair about that. How does that, how can you look a bricklayer in the eyes who wakes up at 5 in the morning to go and work on a building site to contribute to a BMW for a household with a multiple six-figure household income? Do you know what the CEO, and again, let's look at the output of this, the chief executive of Motability Operations earns north of £740,000 a year. This whole programme has gotten totally out of control. It's totally unfair on the people who graft really hard and, to your point, Michelle, are struggling to be able to afford any kind of car, let alone a BMW.
One of my viewers has said it's not just BMWs, Michelle. It's a brand new car every 3 years. Other people are getting in touch and going, hold on a minute, Michelle, we don't own them, we just lease them. I can tell you, because we did this a few weeks ago, and a lot of you were getting in touch and saying, some of you was telling me that you've got these mobility cars, and you were saying, well, hold on a minute, Michelle, we're entitled to these benefits, and if we're entitled, and the government has deemed us entitled, what's it got to do with you lot and everyone else, what we then spend that entitlement on? I can imagine that many of you will be getting in touch with similar thoughts on that one. But let me ask you quickly about councils. Do you think they should be working 4-day weeks? The first council in England, South Cambridgeshire, to be precise, they've trialled this, they liked what they did, and they are going to enact it. You know a thing or two, Zia Youssef, about council efficiency. Would you support these moves?
Well, it's kicking sand in the faces of taxpayers once again. So if a council, look, if a private business wants to allow their employees to work from home or 2 days a week, more power to them. That's they've got a profit incentive, and if they make bad decisions, they'll go bankrupt. The council's employees their salaries are funded by taxpayers. The bulk of that taxpayer money comes from people, I keep going back to it, who set their alarm clocks in the evening, wake up in the morning, and they graft hard 5 days a week.
But this council is saying it's going to save money. They reckon £400,000 annually.
So the council did a trial, and what they found was, by allowing these employees to work 4 days a week instead of 5, services did not suffer. Can I make a bet right now?
They didn't actually, Zia. They found that the services actually improved during that period.
No, there was a portion. No, there was a portion. No, there was a portion that improved. There was a portion that stayed the same, and there's a portion that declined. The overall assessment of the report, Barry, I did read it, said that overall there was no meaningful impact on services on average. And my point is this, Michelle. My point is this. I bet you if you allowed half of those employees to work 0 days a week and took their salaries down to 0, you would probably see the same result. It's completely unfair. Look, my mum's a nurse. She's 70. She still works as a nurse. She can't work from home. If you're paid by the taxpayer, you have a moral obligation to go and work inside the office. And one of the other things I've noticed as part of my role working inside these councils, and I want to be clear, there are some good people, obviously. There's a lot of good people who work really hard in these councils, but there is nobody actually holding people accountable for actually ensuring that taxpayers are getting value for that productivity. It's an absolute disgrace that at a time of a cost of living crisis where people are getting eye-watering increases in taxpayer, eye-watering increases in council tax, and there's nobody. It's completely unacceptable.
Right, Barry Gardner, go.
You'd be great on just a minute. You can talk seamlessly.
Well, come on then, don't use our minutes up then. Go on.
No, indeed. Look, the point is this. There was a saving to the council, as you know, and that saving came in terms of the turnover of staff, in terms of the cost savings that there were from agency staff. So you did read the reports here, but you conveniently omitted to talk about that. Now, I'm absolutely in favour of making sure that things like this are not done permanently, because you made the point that this was a trial, and then the staff were asked at the end of that trial period whether it had worked, and they did the review and they said, yep, it's been a good thing, we've made savings, the services haven't suffered. So now they're thinking of making it permanent. Now, if you were a member of that staff, you might now have worked very hard during the trial to make sure that your productivity did not slacken off. But actually, once it's permanent, you feel, well, actually, I don't need to keep on putting in the same effort. So I'm not in favour of making it permanent, but I do think you need to characterise it accurately as to what actually happened.
Well, what what do you think, ladies and gents? Because I've got to say, the picture is a little bit of everything, actually. Some stuff did improve, some stuff didn't, and other stuff actually stayed the same. If you're a council taxpayer in that area, are you happy with this? Apparently, when I'm actually looking at the surveyed respondents, only 45% of them said that they supported 4-day working weeks for things like bin collections, council tax, and the council's customer contact centre. Is this the future, though, 4-day weeks? Why stop at 4? Will it be 3 next? Will it be 2 next? Will it be none next? I don't know. I thought we were supposed to be focusing on productivity in this country. Get in touch. Tell me your thoughts. Look, after the break, very serious matters. The anniversary of 7/7. Why, though, have we been talking about all of these lives lost as though they were carelessly misplaced, ladies and gents? I want to look at this and ask whether or not we've actually learnt lessons. I'll see you in 2.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here.
I'm Michelle Dewberry. Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co. With me, Michelle Dewberry, Barry Gardner and Zia Youssef. Patricia has got in touch. You know, you're telling me that you're the grandparent of an 11-year-old with Down syndrome. You're saying you know a lot about this, and you think, actually, that this SEND provision is not actually working the way it should. You're suggesting it's going to the school, but you're suggesting, in your experience, it's not necessarily then being filtered through to the child in the way that it should. Lots of you, I can tell you, though, are getting in touch about SEND. You're really, really divided on this one at home, I can tell you. But look, before I finish the show tonight, of course, I want to reflect on the fact that it is, of course, the 20th anniversary of the 7/7 terror attack here in London. You know, it's such a traumatic... I remember that day well, actually. I worked in the City of London near Aldgate Tube. I'll never forget that day as long as I live. It was horrendous. Of course, nothing more so than for anyone that was caught up on that, whether it was people that were murdered that day or maimed that day, made disabled that day, you name it. One of the things that caught my eye, because we've seen so many tributes paid today, I just want to read you a few of them. Keir Starmer, he goes on to tell us it's 20 years on from the day of this attack. He thanks the first responders and all the rest of it, but yet he's talking about how he's going to remember all of those people whose lives were lost and changed forever. Yvette Cooper, she's done a tweet and she's saying that she'll remember the 52 people who have lost their lives. Chris Philp, he's saying we will remember those people who lost their lives. Reform UK, they've tweeted out saying that they will remember all of those people whose lives were lost. And you know what, ladies and gents, I felt a little bit insulted when I read those tributes, because these lives were not lost. They were not carelessly misplaced. These people did not go out for a little wander in the park and got themselves lost on the way home. These innocent people were slain by a murderous, extremist, Islamist ideology. And on this date, 20 years down the line, if people from across the political spectrum cannot even accept that for what it is, then what on earth are we doing about actually making ourselves safer in this country? It worries me, ladies and gents. Zia Youssef, what do you think?
I think it's a very perceptive point you're making, Michelle. Using the word lost very subtly puts the agency on the person losing the thing, right? Not on the people who robbed those people of their lives. It takes away from it looks to minimise the agency of the monsters who perpetrated those attacks, the majority of whom were raised and radicalised in the United Kingdom. And therefore, of course, we have to hold the victims in our thoughts, not just the 52 people who died, but the hundreds, as you said, who were maimed and disabled, who still live with that to this day. Likewise, the families. And like you, I remember vividly where I was when I first heard about it. But the reality is we've got to do more than that, and we've got to acknowledge the fact that the political elites in this country, 2 decades on, far from learning the lessons of all of that, they've done the opposite. They've thrown open our borders. North of 150,000 unvetted, largely men, have come in to this country from countries like Iran, Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, countries with widespread hatred of Britain. And we're starting to see the fruits of that. The warning signs are flashing bright red. We saw 7 Iranians arrested for an attempted terrorist attack in the United Kingdom, foiled by our brilliant security services. That was, what, a couple of months ago?
Yeah, but why did Reform UK go down this same path?
I
was very, very surprised to see that, because a lot of my viewers, they would expect, no offence, Barry Gardner, but they would expect people like Yvette Cooper to be saying silly things like people lost their lives and all the rest of it. They wouldn't necessarily expect Reform UK to do that.
Yeah, I think that was a wrong word to use. That's totally the wrong word to use.
Let me say, these people were murdered. That's the reality.
But then why is it so hard for politicians to say this?
Look, let me try and give an explanation. I don't know whether it's right. Let me try and give an explanation. I think when you say something, and I was privileged this morning, I went to St Paul's for the commemoration service, and it was a wonderful service, and it really did celebrate their lives and focus on what was a loss for the whole community. And I think this is perhaps what people are trying to express, that this was not just people died as a result of being murdered by those bombings. It's also a matter that the whole community is the poorer for the fact that they have gone. And this morning we celebrated the responders, we celebrated all those who had come together in London to show the strength and the resilience of London. We talked about the police, we talked about the security services, and all of the work that has gone in following those bombings. But I think sometimes we can lose sight, and I think this is a point you're making, we can lose sight of the fact that at the core of this was something deeply evil, and it was a murderous plot to cause as much terror in the population of this country as possible.
Many people will think this is a deliberate, it's not like an accidental, casual losing sight of. It's a deliberate blind eye turning to what actually went on that day, because I'm rereading them. I've got them all printed out in front of me. They're not talking about the broader loss. They're specifically talking about those people who lost their lives. Yeah. That is the wording. And I'm telling you, it's right across the political spectrum. And ladies and gents, if I was a relative and it was my loved one that was minding their own business, that had just gone to work, as so many of us do in this country, and rightly so, you're just minding your own business, you're innocent, and some radical Islamist extremist sat opposite my loved one and looked them probably in the eye and blew them to pieces because that person has a warped ideology and they value dying more than they value living. If I sat there today and I heard my politicians, my leaders of this country, referring to my loved one having somehow lost their life as though they were just casually meandering on their way to work and, oh, accidentally, what happened here? I'd be furious today. And the reason I'd be furious today is because I think if you don't have the spine to accept the issues and the threats that we face in this country, then how on earth would you have the spine and be trusted to actually take seriously this expanding threat that we face as innocent citizens in this country? It really infuriates me. And I sit there and I think on a daily basis, we are probably importing even more of these radical extremists. And if I have to hear one more time people saying, yeah, sure, we've got radical Islamists on the terror list, but guess what? So we've got these far-right people as well. It is not comparable. Everybody knows it's not comparable. And honestly, I hope and pray that we get some politicians in this country with an actual backbone. Oh. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, well, look, so number one, they're not comparable and it's demonstrable mathematically. So according to Hansard, the official record, Michelle, the vast majority, actually, of MI5's caseload Islamist terrorists, not far-right terrorists, despite what Labour would claim. I tweeted a couple of hours ago, I used the word murdered. I regret the fact that the Reform account used the word lost. I completely agree with you.
Good. Well, look, do you know what? I really do, actually. My heart does go out to each and every single person that was caught up in that horrendous situation that day. I will never, ever, ever forget it as long as I live. And I know that so many families equally will never, ever forget that moment. I just hope and pray that actually we have learned some lessons. I've got to tell you, though, I fail to believe that we have. Barry Gardner, thank you for your company tonight. Zia Youssef, thank you for yours too. Thank you to each and every single one of you. I really do value and appreciate you spending your last hour with us all on GB News. Have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow night.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed